Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow us on Twitter, me on Twitter at KEVOLE. You can follow us, of course, on the podcast _hockey on Twitter. Follow me, KEVOLE. You can subscribe, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please click that subscribe button, as this is our very first live YouTube video. We've usually been doing these on Facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast. We've been recapping Flames games. We've been recapping Canucks playoff games. Also subscribe on Google, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Spotify. And usually we start with a little bit of a fancy start, but thought a little bit of a cold opening, as it's been a very it's been a very emotional last couple of days. I'm already welling up. I'm even surprised, but with what has happened with the NHL, we are, of course, the NHL has canceled games tonight. And they canceled the games tomorrow, and we will be back to regular hockey games on Saturday. This was after the NBA announced that they were boycotting. I'm going to start with what my understanding of everything was, and of all of this, and then walk us through. And then Sean is here, Heidi is here. Hello, I'm not ignoring you. I'm in my own.
No worries, Kevin.
The Toronto Raptors started, actually, it was the Toronto Raptors that started the conversation from when I read. The Toronto Raptors and Boston Celtics were in the talks to actually cancel or boycott game one after the shooting in Milwaukee. And then it was the Milwaukee Bucks that did the first step and announced that they were boycotting their game five of their first round playoff game against the Orlando Magic, which led to everyone else in the NBA decided that they were going to postpone and cancel their games for the next couple of days. 7 o'clock Eastern comes up, the NHL. We were not surprisingly, came out and decided to play games, and was met with a lot of anger, specifically highlighted by Kelly Hrudey. Matt Dumba was speaking, Evander Kane was speaking. And the NHL today, after a number of meetings, have decided that every team is going to have one game canceled, and tonight's games are canceled. Friday's games are canceled, and again, we're back on Saturday. So just to catch you up where we're at, and I'm not promising we've got any solutions, but tonight I'm not here on my end to promise that I've got things that solved, but I think it's important for us, even if we're a hockey podcast, to talk kind of through what we've been through. I think that, there was a lot of anger from the hockey community of how the NHL players and the NHL community responded yesterday. And there was a lot of happiness with how the NHL responded today. But still, I think we've got a myriad of emotions and a myriad of things that go on. So if you have comments, feel free to leave them on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and we'll get through that. So that's kind of the introduction of what we have. I'm Sean, Heidi. We usually have a transparency here. We usually have an agenda that we go through. I didn't really create one. We're going to just open the floor and we're just going to talk. So Sean, Heidi, whoever wants to talk, I'll give you the floor. Kind of tell us what you're feeling right now.
Okay. Sean's looking at me, so means that I should probably talk. Yeah, it's been an eventful few days. Just as I said, you kind of like went through kind of the timeline of all of it. I've had some confliction about not necessarily how I should feel, but how I should express my feelings, and whether I feel like where I should say them and where I shouldn't say them. And because the social media community can be a little problematic, I'll just say that. So just with everything, with the nature of this I don't know what you want to call it, movement, event, maybe event is just kind of the best way to say it. It's that's kind of like where like my personal conflict's been with this. My feelings in general about the whole thing is that I'm happy to see this. I'm not just saying this just because I'm a Flames fan and my team's not in this. I'm not one as opposed to obviously the person sitting right beside me and and a lot of my friends, that the Canucks are still involved and the Canucks are still supposed to be playing games. And so don't get me wrong, don't think that just because I'm a Flames fan that it doesn't, I'm not feeling so, my feelings might be different because of that. I don't think that's true at all. But yeah, I'm in full support of what the NBA did, WNBA, MLS, MLB, both more likely to the players, but to the extent what the individual leagues have done. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later about the league versus the players, because it's been, and I don't know exactly the details of the leagues outside the NHL and how their involvement is with everything. But just to kind of like generalize, I'm in full support of this. Like when I started hearing about the basketball games being canceled, I was like, good. I was like, if this is something that's going to bring the conversation about and have people talking, then that's great. But when I was sitting there yesterday, I was like, okay, so the NHL, are they going to do anything? Do they need to do anything? At that time, I wasn't 100% feeling like they needed to. But I've been so far been happy just in general with what I've seen. For the most part, I feel like I'm kind of going all over this. I'm used to Kevin asking questions, so I'm kind of jumping all over. The only time that I was not very happy with what the NHL did last night. The statement that they made, they might as well just said nothing. Like it was something that somebody who's not even trained in PR could write up very quickly. And the fact that they just did nothing in the late game, that was garbage. As I think I kept saying on Twitter, it was absolute garbage move. Because it's basically like you might as well have done nothing. But to see a lot more come out today is good. And I rather than kind of shit on the league for that, I'm gonna just take the high road and just be like, you know what, maybe they just needed the time. They got caught off guard, whatever. They weren't prepared. I mean, they should have been, but whatever, it's done is done. So I'm happy to see what there is. I need to turn this to somebody else to talk, and then I think I could bring up a few more points.
I am first and foremost, what the NHL did yesterday was not enough. It was embarrassing to be a hockey fan, to see that they tried to do something that was not even close to the magnitude that it needed to be. The way that they handled it today, though, I believe was fantastic. It was spearheaded by the players, spearheaded by the Canucks and the Golden Knights specifically. And you're seeing the change that you need to see in how NHL players are viewing this. The other one thing I want to say is, as much as I want to say whether you agree or disagree with the decision, I can't, because I think if you need to, in my opinion, you need to agree with this decision, because it was players saying we do not want to play because of this issue. This wasn't anything political or anything like that. This was full on the players standing up and saying, because of what has happened, we do not want to play, and we want to make a statement so that people know that what has happened and what is happening in our society in the US and in Canada is not good enough. And they have every right to do that. And the leagues, the NBA, MLS, and MLB, and the NHL, the teams that are finding ways to support their players to do that are doing a fantastic job with that. I am very proud to be a Canucks fan today, based off of the fact that it sounds like the Canucks were one of the big catalysts for changing the narrative of what was happening in the NHL and how they were handling it. They felt that they needed to make a stand, and they forced everyone to change their tone. And I feel very proud to be a Canucks fan based off of that. But this is just the beginning. 1 or 2 days off of not playing sports isn't going to change society. This is just the beginning. We need to have frank and honest and civil discussions about what's wrong. We need to figure out how to not be screaming at each other and saying that just because you disagree with what they've done doesn't make you a bad person. It may mean you're ill-informed, misinformed, or just not willing to listen. But we need to find a way to get through and inform properly everyone what's going on and why this is such a big incident and why this is such a big movement. Right now, this is an incident. This is an event. Whether or not it leads to more will determine whether or not it's a movement. We've seen, was it during the COVID pause, Sportsnet had multiple people on to talk about equality after Akim Aliu came out. Sportsnet again had multiple people on to talk about it, but it just neither of those seem to stem the changes that we need to make. Maybe there were some small changes, but not the big changes that we need. And that's something that we need to make sure that personally we're doing, and we're holding accountable our friends, our families, the sports teams we follow, the athletes we follow, the celebrities we follow, and most specifically, the politicians that we elect to help build this change and build a society that is equal for everyone until they prove that they don't deserve it. Because right now, unfortunately, we have a situation where it's not. And it's based on what some people are going through because of their race, others aren't, and that's not fair and that's not right. But I think the one thing I've struggled with is what to say and how to say it, and because I'm not fully on board with a lot of the way a lot of people are going full bore on the Black Lives Matter movement and how they're just screaming and basically calling anyone who doesn't fully agree with them and labeling them with terms that don't necessarily match. I think there's better ways to handle things. I think we need to be more civil and open to discussion as opposed to just screaming. I want to see that. I don't want to see labels be put on people before you even actually know where they're coming from. I have people that I know that are definitely not, are even more away from the extreme, let's not the extreme, but the full bore Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement, and they are not bad people, but they get called that because they are not fully on board with that. And I think that's something that we need to work on as well. Like this needs to be a united movement where everyone is invited to join, no matter what their nuanced opinion is.
For me, I guess a lot of people perceive me as, I do news stuff. For those who follow me on Twitter, I do sports stuff. And I guess I have there's been a perception or perceiving that like I'm a reporter, and as a reporter, I'm supposed to be objective. And I got called out today by someone because I was preaching, because I basically said, if you're bitching and moaning on Twitter and Facebook that games are canceled, and you're calling radio shows and you're texting radio shows, and believe me, if you've been listening to a sports radio show, I will tell you that there was no word of a lie about the crap that they've gone through. I will confirm they went through a lot of crap. They got a lot of really awful texts, and and basically I was called out for preaching. And I guess from my perspective, I don't really know what to do, because I don't think that this is a situation that we can sit at and look at and see two sides of a story or look at objectively. This is Jacob Green. I wanted to call him Jordan Green. Am I mispronouncing his name again? It's Jacob Green, right? Yes, thank you. I mean, because I'm struggling with Jacob or Jordan for some reason in my head. So just if I say Jordan, I apologize. Jacob Green was shot 7 times in
Blake. Sorry, yeah, it's Jacob Blake there, Kevin.
Jacob Blake, not Jacob Green. Jacob Blake. My apologies.
Canucks brain.
Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in front of his children. Whether he had a criminal record or not, that is not a humane way that you arrest someone at all. Wasn't an isolated incident. This started because of George Floyd. There was a mention already of Breonna Taylor. We have a countless other number of people that have been through this. 9-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 17-year-olds. If you are a wrestling fan, and by the way, if you are, I would recommend that you listen to the New Day podcast that they've done. They've done a couple of these podcasts on this. But Big E Langston, every match has had an armband honoring a victim of police brutality. And he's been doing this since June. The New Day were doing it when Kofi Kingston was wrestling. He's injured now. He had an armband as well. And it was an endless amount. This is not a one isolated incident, and I can't sit here and be objective about something that is going on that is really a human rights issue. So if you're feeling that I'm preaching at you, I really don't know what else to do to get attention. And I'm not trying to get, when I say attention, I'm not trying to get attention for me. This is not about me. But what I'm feeling is that there's 3 categories right now. There's the categories of those that are getting it. They're responding, and they're part of on board. And they're like, you know what? I think that the way that we need to make some changes. There's the other category, and I do have an understanding for them. And it's the ones that really don't know what to do. They don't know if not participating in basketball or hockey, or understanding that 2 days is not going to solve everything. They don't quite understand or not fully on board with some of the political views of some of the people involved, but they do see a problem. They don't know what to do about it. And that's an honest position. That's an honest, raw human emotion. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. I know that there's going to be people on there that say that you should know. I get what you're saying, but there's still an educational component. And I think that we need to have some empathy. The people I'm concerned about are those with the willingly or unwillingly want their heads in the sand. Let's stick to sports. Why are sports and politics meshing? There's no need for that. We just talk about hockey. Let's just shut this off. Well, there also seem to be some of the same people that supported Don Cherry's political point of view. So you cannot escape politics, lifestyle, or whatever is going on here. There were stories today. I was listening to the radio all day. There are stories today from families that are going to try out for hockey games and are getting called the N-word because are like, you know what? Sorry, I'm out. You can't play. Or if we're going to be called the N-word, sorry, we're out. You know, I have a friend. They travel to the States quite often. They live out here. They're an interracial couple. She's white. He's black. Guess who has drives? She does, because if he drives, there's more questions for him going why they're crossing the border than when she's driving why they're crossing the border. They get called names. They get called unspeakable things. It's too much for us to sit here and be objective and just sit here and talk about hockey. There needs to be something to go forward. So I'm sorry if for those that are feeling that I'm preaching at you or I'm preaching. I'm a raw human being that is trying to figure this out and have made mistakes on the same path, and I'm trying to figure this out like everybody else. And I love the game of hockey. I was never good at the game of hockey, but I was always good at play-by-play and always good at using my voice. And that's what I have. That's what I got. I don't know if I made any sense there.
No, that you did, Kevin. And I don't think that anything you said today was preachy. Just my kind of general statement about, like, I'm finding it in this, and like Sean's heard all this because me and him have been obviously talking about this stuff, but and this can apply to other things, that other social issues and anything, but it is okay to have different opinions about this. It's okay to have different opinions about a lot of things, but it does not mean that you need to be an absolute jackass to other people just because their opinions are different than yours. Like, that is what is, like, I'm fine with this being a discussion, whether there are people seeing different sides of this, because I think even the three of us on this call probably have differing things about what we want to see and how we feel. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's the name calling, and that's not productive. In the past couple days, just in conversations that I've seen or been part of on various social media platforms, I have seen basically people saying that people who are supporting the sports community, or that were not very happy with the fact that the NHL didn't make a move or anything, were, and to quote this, fucking losers. I saw somebody else get called a fucking idiot for just not even saying anything bad, just for agreeing with what the players were doing, and like that name calling. And these are the same people that are saying, oh, none of this stuff is going to work. None of this stuff is going to work. Well, of course, if you make it about name calling, of course it's not going to work, because the real issues are getting lost in this constant need to yell and scream about each other. And that is what is frustrating me the most, is about that, is this need to, like, as I said, like, name call and shame, and this has been going on, I think, with a lot of other things too, like with different things around COVID and politics, masks, and all this kind of thing. And I think just everybody kind of feeling the stress of 2020 and spending probably more and almost too much time on social media, to be honest. This need that they feel like they can just be just absolute jackasses to each other is is not going to be helpful to anything that this movement is trying to do. Or as actually, I liked what Sean said. It's like it's not a movement until we see actual action go on. But in this kind of in what's been going on and what we're talking about tonight, we need to get past that so that we can actually have the kind of conversations. And right now, I'm not feeling hopeful about the idea of, unfortunately, changing people's minds. I would like to actually hear, Kevin, your thought on this about how much you feel that you expressing your thoughts on Twitter, because I've been expressing my thoughts on Twitter too. Obviously, I'm very, anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that like I've been saying things, but I haven't been full on. I would say that I haven't been shaming or preaching or anything to anybody, but I at the same time don't actually feel like I'm going to be changing anyone's mind. That the people who are completely against us, who think that athletes are just whiny baby billionaires who or millionaires or whatever, that they can afford to take a day off or whatever, that they don't actually care, or that their voices don't matter. I'm still not convinced that those people that feel that way are going to have their minds changed. Because in my opinion, when I've tried to speak up for anything that I have felt in that thing, I don't feel like I've ever changed anyone's mind. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with that, and that whole idea of how we kind of go forward, and how whether, say, someone like me, so someone who's white and middle class or whatever, and lives in Canada, and what I'm saying going to matter? I don't know.
But I think what we need to have is we need to be willing to put ourselves out there. Elliot Friedman talked on Sportsnet today about how he talked with the black NHL player, and he said the player said he doesn't think that Elliot is I think it was like aggressive or assertive enough, or puts himself out there enough in terms of to be as strong an advocate for changes as they're hoping for. And I think there's a lot of people who are big, brash, and opinionated, but are afraid to make any sort of statements about stuff like this because of the super willingness to have people throw insults around and everything. We have to. I'd be one of those. Everyone knows I'm very opinionated on a lot of things, but in this one, I want to be right. I want to make sure that I come from the right place and say things correctly. And I don't want to say something that with the wrong term that can be construed as negative and taking away from what I'm trying to say. And that's, I think, one of the big issues for a lot of people. And I think and we need to just be welcome to and open to having frank, honest, and civil discussions. And if you make a mistake, you shouldn't be called out for it. You should be corrected and not scolded or chastised. And I think this whole movement, if that's what we want it to be, and I think we all do, it needs to be about learning. It needs to be about teaching. It needs to be about educating everyone on it. And yelling at people doesn't help that. We need to be able to look at how people change and not hold them to what they've done 5, 6, 12, 14 years ago. I'd love to see people be willing to stop yelling and have conversations and come at someone has a legit question on whether or not the movement that all the actions that have been taken are the right ones? I think that's a fair and legit question. This morning, I put a tweet out asking, are we going to villainize people who don't believe that boycotts and strikes and postponements of games is the right move? Because I don't think we need to be villainizing those people as long as they are willing to tell us what they think the right movement is to help fix this, what they think the sports leagues and anyone who has a platform should be doing to help further along this movement of equality that we all need to see happen. Because if you're going to just yell at people and tell them that they're wrong and insult them, then no one's going to want to listen to what you have to say. And then you're going to have more people tune out what you're saying. And I think we really do need to have an honest, frank discussion about not only our actions towards people of minority, but our actions towards other people who aren't, because they disagree with us. And I think we really do need to find a way to not yell and scream. And then if you're on social media, block or mute people who disagree with you too much. If they are being absolute jerks and assholes, yes, do it. Block, report. Make sure that social media isn't a place where people don't feel comfortable talking. Let's make social media that place. But it's a tough line to walk. I understand that, where we need to make sure that the people acting like jerks, assholes, and whatever are called on it. But we should be also not jumping down anyone's throat who has a differing opinion, or throwing out I keep wanting to use extreme, but I don't think that's the right term. Very definitive statements that make people not want to take part in the discussion, especially the people. I think there is a large majority that are silent on this because they don't know what to say and they're afraid to say something wrong. Because there are so many people out there that are just going to jump down their throats if they say something wrong. And I think that's step one, is to welcome as many people into the movement as possible. And step two is to figure out what we can do to welcome anyone and everyone. Doesn't matter race, sex, age, doesn't matter what, anything like that people can't control. They should be able to be a part of this discussion.
Well, I think for me, I get there's so much to go through, but I think what I'm hearing you try to say is what Jason Brough said, is there's not enough empathy right now. There's not enough empathy towards, minorities, BIPOC, not enough empathy towards that. And he said this, and it's, there's going to be some people that are going to kind of shrill when they hear it, but I'm just going to quote, basically kind of subquote what he said. Empathy towards those that are living in rural communities that have only heard of Trump and they don't have anything else around them that is different. They're living in a certain world, in a certain vacuum, and they're not out into other places so they can see other perspectives, and having an empathy for that. I think for some people that's very hard because they hear the message of Donald Trump and they feel that message is coming out in other ways, and they're seeing other things, and it's just a response and anger towards that. But I guess maybe to answer Heidi's question, and I want to get into that whole conversation with what Elliot Friedman says. I don't know if it's changed anybody's mind. But I think what Elliot Friedman also said is he's a thinker in that conversation. He's a person that likes to think. And I hope during these discussions, however they are, whether they're on YouTube, whether I write something, whether I tweet something, whatever, that at least it makes somebody think and is challenged a little bit to look at the other perspective. And not just listen to a certain section of their news. And, you know, the left listens to their left news, the right listens to their right news. In a sense, I don't necessarily know if that's both sides, like both sides are necessarily out there, but I do think there's a larger majority of people, to be fair, that do listen to both sides and both perspectives. But just, I think there's some people that are tweeting and where I have to push back is they're tweeting from a place either of coldness or a lack of research or just their head in the sand. And I think that to me is where the problem is it's not, again, if someone doesn't know or is not sure what to say, or, you know, how is boycotting a basketball game or a hockey game or baseball game or anything like that going to make any change? That's a valid question. And people are asking a lot about that today. That's an honest question. Like, what is this going to do? I think that's an honest place where people are at, but it's what, you know, it's the concern about the heads in the sand. And I guess it's important to, you know, in that discussion for people that are trying to speak out and trying to say something but aren't sure that they're going to have the right words to say. Yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be some graciousness, but I've also heard from people from the minority community and the BIPOC community says, you know what, I'm tired of, and we've heard a lot of this. We heard Matt Dumba say this on 650. I think even Evander Kane said this as well. They're tired of always having to answer these questions. Like, it's time for us in the white community, either A, to do more research and it's out there, or B, to speak out a little bit more. So I feel like I rambled through a couple of things there, but I think what we do need people that think, and we do need people to get into the discussion, and even if it's offline and maybe more private discussion, but we also need a lot of people get their heads out of the sands or out of their ass, if I'm being harsh, and just get informed. It's not, you know, it's not one isolated incident, and it's not the left, you know, creating this. There is a real legitimate issue in the US and also in Canada when it comes to racial inequality, and it's tough.
Yeah, I do think that, first off, I want these discussions to try and take out any sort of political.
Right, I'm using, I won't.
I know what you're trying to do. Yeah, I know you're not trying to make anything that I'm trying to take that language out of my talk whenever I talk about stuff like that. I was bad for it for a while, and I'm trying to get rid of it because I don't think it helps. Because again, it's language like that makes people not want to talk. We do need to step up. We do need to talk. But just because someone's not vocal on social media doesn't mean they're not thinking about it, and doesn't mean they're not discussing it offline with their family and friends. And those discussions are just as important. I think we get into a spot right now where a lot of people where they treat social media as the be all end all of what someone thinks. And a lot of people don't like being on social media at all. A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with social media. That would be me. I love being on it to discuss hockey. I loved being on it to discuss other sports, the fun stuff, promoting local businesses and all that. But as soon as it gets to this anything political or social like this, I find I would prefer to have these discussions offline. So because A, you don't really see tone in text very well. and B, you don't really. It's easy to get really really upset instead of just being able to talk it through and seeing facial expressions and the empathy that people are trying to express through that. So please, that's one thing I want to make sure everyone understands is offline discussions are just as important. Just because someone isn't making any comments on social media doesn't mean they're not trying to make as many uh, make the changes that we're looking for. And it's the more we make it a welcoming place to have these discussions, the more people we can bring on to make the changes we need to make. We need to make our hockey arenas. We need to make our public areas. We need to make our um, workplaces and schools feel safe and welcoming to know it doesn't matter who they are, what they are. As long as they're good people, they should be able to feel welcome to anywhere they want to go.
Tyler said, "Hey, by the way, hi Tyler. Tyler was watching, and he messaged it in our private chat. And Tyler is probably our most articulate talker on our podcast. But see, he's a professional. Heading out now, but being afraid. This is exactly what he said. Heading out now, but being afraid to say something wrong is how I feel. So if someone with that particular articulation is saying that, I think that there is something valid for that. And there is going to be people, there are people that are very articulate in expressing. Kayla Gray has done a fantastic job. There's other people out there that do a fantastic job, but it's not. It's a legitimate feeling of for those that are feeling that they don't know what to say or what what they're said is wrong, and someone's gonna get you or screenshot you or something like that and try to embarrass you for trying to make a legitimate point. Now, again, if you're being an ass and a dick or a jerk, that's different. Like I'm going to call this guy out. Sorry, but Charlie Kirk is one guy that is intentionally trying to be a jerk. And it's that's embarrassing. If you're trying to be like that, I don't have a lot of super space for you, but if you're legitimately trying to figure this out, I'll give you more space for that. Because I think that is where that is needed. But
I just want to. One thing I also want to talk about is how I really hope the NHL addresses this and in how drastic the press conferences and the bubbles looked. In the East, you basically had separate press conferences for each coach, and each captain was out together. In the West, the coaches were united front and the players were united front. The amount of players that were behind the leaders of each of the four teams left in the West was staggering, and it was amazing because it showed how united they were. It showed that they mean business. They mean that they want to make sure that this decision that they made does not go in vain, and that this decision that they made is the beginning of the movement that they are hoping it is.
Yeah, and I'm going to be one of those people that is going to sort of defend. Yesterday was the presentation was a disaster, but I did think Jason Dickinson made a really good point. And for those who don't remember, Jason Dickinson was one during the Dallas Vegas game. It was him and Tyler Seguin, Robin Leonard, Ryan Reeves that stood together and took the knee. And Jason Dickinson said, basically we were in game mode. And once you're in game mode, it's hard as an athlete to shut that off and get into some other thing. Like I as much as I want to criticize, and I think that there's a lot of valid criticism for how the NHL handled last night, I think I also want to make sure that there was a perspective, like, and Jason Dickinson was one of the people that stood there in the press conference. He's been a person that's been very vocal. He said that these are very important issues. And even Matt Dumba stepped out and said there's a lot of people in the NHL doing a lot of really good things. And I think that was also important as well. But you're right. I think the NHL needs to show a bit more, it sounds like a bit more unity, and I guess that's the other part of this. And I'll ask my first question. If we want the NHL to speak out more, this then allows the Republican, those that are sit more on the pro-Trump side, and let's Sean, I know how you're going to respond to this. You're right. There's going to be basketball players that will sit on that side. There'll be baseball players that sit on that side. But there are going to be a lot of hockey players that sit on that side. Whether it's more or less, I have no idea. But we saw the example this week of Logan Couture tweeting that he supported Trump, and something happened, and then he got in for some unknown reason, got into to Tara Sloan. What about not the Brendan Leipzigs and the Brandon Prusts and the Tony DeAngelos of this, but what about those that do that speak from the, sorry, I have to use this political term, but sort of the pro-Trump conservative side? Like, if we're want to hear from them, are we, like, if we're saying, okay, hockey players, speak out, are we okay with those hockey players that are not going to speak for the movement? Like, where are we at that? Am I making sense with that question?
Yeah, you are. We live in a world of freedom of speech. If they speak out against it, that's on them. That is unfortunately on the wrong side of history. And we need to, again, instead of yelling at them, try and figure out why they're coming from that perspective, and try and educate them. And if they're not going to listen, then that's all you've done what you can. But I don't know if shaming them, calling them out, and everything does that. I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it does make them change their minds. But I just don't know. I do think that we definitely need to try and find other ways to try and get through to them, though. But if they want to come out and speak out against what the NHL has done, I think that's on them. But that also shows the type of person they are, and I don't think there would be any. I don't think they would survive that, just no matter how big of a star they are.
Yeah, I think we need to remember too that, like, and I know this is the second time I've said this to somebody today, but athletes are humans. Athletes they're just like the rest of us. You cannot expect and say, okay, we'll say the NHL. Out of all you guys maybe know what the actual amount of NHL players there are at any given time, but you can't expect them all to fully support this. Like, just the power of statistics. They're not all going to be entirely for this. And as we've already probably said multiple times in this discussion, is everyone's going to have different feelings about this, and they're going to have different ways of how they feel that they're going to bring about change. Like, all of this stuff is going to be different. And I don't think we need to necessarily see every single player's speaking out on social media about this, because I have a good feeling that in the talks, there is people who probably are vocal in the conversations, but they're private, or they're private amongst the teammates and the players, and and what have you, they're outspoken there, but they're quiet on social media, and that is okay. And I'm hoping that the fact that there is those different voices out of the NHL players, that maybe there'll be multiple perspectives on the actions and how, and I'm hoping that will lead about some actions that will be able to hit different targets and hit different people, because I think what will work and maybe convince one person to change their mind won't work with somebody else, and so maybe a different approach.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's finding not one. We shouldn't be blasting people for not agreeing 100% with the approach that has currently been taken. I think there's other ways that we can show support. I think there's other ways that we can show support towards the members of our society that have been downtrodden on because of the way, unfortunately, society has grown. It's time for us to make the changes, and remember, social media isn't the be all end all. So if you don't see someone speaking out on social media, that doesn't mean they aren't talking about it at the very least. Doesn't mean they aren't thinking about it. Doesn't mean they aren't trying to figure out what they can do. Mm-hmm. As much as we wanted to see the NHL make this stand yesterday, and they made it today, and it maybe took them a little bit longer than we all wanted, but they made the stand that was the right move. And as much as I wanted to see what the Canucks could have done tonight, as much as I wanted to see the other game, Philadelphia and the Islanders, and see if what was going on there, this was the right move. Sometimes what is right is bigger than sports. Sports is a luxury. Sports is recreation. Sports is not life. As much as we jokingly say it, there's more important things. And I think in this year we should know this. And had they played, the other question I want to ask, and I want to make sure I want people to have this thought: had the NHL played, but they made a big deal of it before each game, and every player knelt for the national anthems, what would have that sent? Would that have been a good enough statement to say that they aren't ignoring it? Had they done done something that big to make a statement, would that have been okay? Because I think that there's multiple ways of doing this, and there's multiple ways of showing support. And just because I'm fully behind them for making this stand, and I'm fully behind them not playing tonight and tomorrow. But I do think there's multiple ways to do this, and I think we need to make sure that we are welcoming and at least willing to listen to other ways of supporting everyone.
Yeah, and I want to bring this out too, is that just kind of like what Sean just said, there is different ways of supporting this, and you might not agree that this that whatever the striking of the players, canceling games, however you want to word it, or you may not agree that it's not going to that it might not necessarily be the right move. I know with last night, there was people saying that either that maybe they weren't going to watch the games, or maybe that they were going to watch the games. But something that, and I want to bring this up, is it, and this kind of goes back to what my little rant there about shaming on social media, is there was some statements that I saw from people that were basically saying if you were not supporting what either the players were doing or the league was doing, that you were racist, or that you were complacent with racism. And that is not helpful statements to be making.
I
Like,
don't know if I have to admit, after about a couple hours, I actually just shut off social media, so I didn't hear.
yeah, I saw that from multiple things. I saw definitive statements. I saw like both like kind of general, and I saw full on tweets that literally said either you are with, like, it was basically you are with us, so you're not racist, or you're against us, which means you're racist. And yeah, and like that, those kind of statements are not, that's not helpful. That is not the right thing to be saying right now, because that is not, as we talked about, like that's not welcoming productive discussion. That is just shaming people away from not wanting to talk to you.
Yeah, I you know what, I tweeted last night that I couldn't participate in any hockey conversation, and I again, if you could, that was great. But I just wasn't there. I'm personally am not one that would ever make that statement that if you were on, I don't have the place as, and I guess maybe as a straight white male, I don't have that right to say, you know, if you're this, then you are this. I personally can't do it. If other people feel that they can, more power to them, but I don't, I'm with you. I just don't see that as a powerful point of the conversation.
I don't think I like, maybe you guys disagree with me here, but I don't think it matters if you're man, woman, what
well,
race.
I guess,
You should be saying that anyways.
for me, I'm not, you know, I can't call someone out on saying you're privileged when I have lived a life of privilege as well, right? Like I feel like that's hypocritical of me to do personally. Now there's probably some people that like, hey, look, and you know, fair game, I guess. But I try to be careful of making those blanket statements, and you know, there are also people that, like, I guess the other part of this is, I know that you digging in here is the valid, like, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the valid anger towards communities, the white, just ignoring time and time and time again, and just benefiting from it while others other. Where does the anger, what about that anger that is, there's an anger there and it's raw and real, and how do we, I guess, I don't want to say like, I think we have to acknowledge and honor that it's there, and it's maybe not the way that it, you know, I agree it's not productive, but I also think it's coming from a very, and I don't want to use this in a negative, it sounds like a negative word, and I want to be careful that it's not negative. It's coming from an angry place in that it's been so long, it's been too long that we're dealing with this. Does that make sense? I see. So
yeah, it's depending on who's saying it, though, because I will tell you that most of the people that I saw saying it were white people.
And it
was not, it's, yeah, there, I don't think I actually saw that from anyone of color. That's even from anyone of color.
You can be angry, but when you let the anger and the irrational thoughts and everything that comes from that get to you, that's when you say things that aren't helpful. We do need to acknowledge that there is anger there. There is frustration. There is absolute just disbelief that we're still dealing with this. And I deal with that as well. But unfortunately, I haven't lived it, so I don't have it as much as the people who have. But I do think we need to make sure that we, doesn't matter who you are, if you want to be heard, you want people to take you seriously, I think the more rational you are, the more people are going to actually listen. Just because you've got a whole bunch of retweets and likes and whatever social media thing is, doesn't make what you've said correct, right, or doesn't make how you said it correct or right. Just means that just because that the loudest and most out there thing is said is the thing that gets spread around the most, doesn't make it right. We need to start making sure that we have people that we are supporting the rational thinkers as much as we're supporting the people who are going out there and pounding the pavement and trying to make change as well, because they're being loud. We need to support the thinkers and the people who want to make change and want to help create a better environment, but are doing it in a quieter way.
Yeah. So for the next 2 days, well, we got tonight, we got tomorrow. What are you hoping we see from the NHL, from the thinkers, the coaches, the managers? And Heidi, you tweeted this out, and so I'd like to kind of hear what you have to say. You tweeted at the Flames and asked what are you hoping teams like the Flames do?
Well, I hadn't seen the Flames hadn't tweeted out anything, and what I was like, and I just had saw a thought, and this wasn't just about the Flames, but I was just like, you know what? Like we were talking about the differences between the press conferences on the east side and the west side, and I would just realize I'm like, this is only 8 teams here. The teams outside the bubble need to be doing stuff too. Like there needs to be something, whether, and not just PR statements. But I was also wondering where the Flames PR statement had come from, considering that most of the other teams that at least were in the bubble had already made theirs hours ago. The Flames tweeted theirs out about 20 minutes ago. And it's your pretty basic standard response that you guys can go check it out. It's basically nothing substantial. It's your kind of general thought, but yeah, like I'm very interested to see the players in the bubble who are going to be there. What are they going to be doing with their two days of time? Like what's going on? Is there like, are they just going to go, they're like, sweet, we have extra days to practice? Because if there's only that narrative going on, then that the fact that if they're just going to be hanging out, drinking coffee and practicing, and there's no actual, seemingly like there's nothing going on, then what were these 2 days for? But if we see something, if we see some of the players that maybe we don't see speak out about these types of things coming out of the bubble, because they've had this time to talk to their teammates. They're all in super close quarters. They have the time now to do it. And for them, we need to see something, anything. Just honestly, I'm not hoping for like the world of just, there's things that you can't do in 2 days, but they have this time. It's time to come together, think about what they could be doing when they get back to their communities. Like, so we'll just use the Canucks. The Canucks could be talking about different things, different initiatives that they could be doing with whatever. It's called the Flames Foundation here. I don't know what whether the Canucks call it. They have a Canucks Foundation. It's basically the overarching.
There's not really an
organization.
Own the Canucks, right? So there's not really a Canucks Foundation necessarily.
Okay, but anyways, like the Flames Foundation, it's a big entity that raises the money, and then they split the money through different initiatives, and what have you. So, Yeah, like the players could be talking about that kind of stuff, and then the teams outside the bubble, they need to be out there talking about this stuff too, because and maybe it sucks right now because probably most of their social media marketing people, all that stuff, are all on holidays right now. They're taking that they have this opportunity to take some time away, and they're kind of on, low end stuff or what, and I totally get that. But yeah, I want to see stuff coming out of them too. I'm really interested to see. I just want to see something. If I see teams not doing anything, or just if all you see is their one basic blanket statement from their social media, and that's it, then that's not great. I was thinking about this, and thinking about today. So for the Flames, you know what? If anybody saw or heard about the comments and just what Matthew Tkachuk said about the team and talking about his fellow players and just how passionate it was, and how we saw him throwing his arms and getting angry about the Flames falling apart. If I could see that passion from him or another Flames player about this kind of stuff, like that would be amazing.
I one of the things that I was going through my head, and I think let's applaud the Seattle Kraken, because they have been a very vocal supporter of all of this. I've probably been a leader in this as well. But the other side of that is, I hope they don't, like, other teams are really thoughtful of what they say. And I know you're not, I think we're saying the same thing, but you, like, just like everything else, it's maybe people in the social media world not knowing exactly what to say here. And okay, we've got this statement, but I think you're right. We need to see more, but there's such a rock and a hard place, especially if you say something wrong. Like, as an example, what happened when the Canucks and the Wild started game one, and they made the joke about George Floyd, and that went over completely like a lead balloon. And that was probably a scheduled tweet, but like, there are, that, like, I'm hoping, I think we're all kind of trying to say here is, with emotion, we need some thought too. And I hope there's some thoughtful stuff. And I agree with you too. I'd like to see, like, more, just like some passionate thought. Is that the right word?
Yeah. One thing is, I believe that there is another scheduled call, or at least multiple scheduled calls with the Hockey Diversity Alliance with the players in the bubble tomorrow. So they're going to have even some more discussions tomorrow. But going forwards, there's a few things I want to see. I want to see American teams find ways to provide the arenas as voting buildings for the upcoming election, because and make voting a lot more accessible for people. This election upcoming is huge. It's going to shape it could potentially shape the U.S. for the next 8 years. Definitely for at least the next 2 to 4, but potentially for the next 8. I want to see more. Let's look at the Canucks as well. They have Diwali night every year now for the past few years, to help celebrate the cultures in the South Pacific and all the countries are surrounding them. They've got Lunar New Year as well for Asian and others. I think we need to see more of that from other teams. I'll toss the Flames in for that one. Calgary is a very multicultural city. We do not see enough of that openness and welcomeness, and nights to celebrate that multiculturalism in the Dome, and that needs to change. I want to see more work with the players, doing more work in inner city places, trying to help out people in there who aren't very well off and need help and are and just make it so that these people feel welcome. They want to cheer for these players because they are good people who support them and understand their plight. I want to see more, yeah, and that's, as well as I want to see them engaging in discussions about what they're doing wrong and how they can fix it and how they can be better people and better allies to the marginalized. And I definitely want to see all of that, and I want to see them just be more vocal about their support. And if they aren't, then we need to call them out on it.
I think in terms of just a sports media landscape, I'd like to see more female sports hosts. And I say that as a person trying to get into this industry as well. I think we need female, we need diverse BIPOC. I don't think, I think Sportsnet has done a good job, but I think TSN needs to improve on that. I think Sportsnet 960 probably needs to, sorry to say that, but I think that's something I think that needs to be addressed. I agree, Sean. I think the Flames specifically, I'm thinking, and I don't follow the home games enough of other teams and know each and every one of their nights, but I do know that I think the Flames need to step up on that. And
just to follow up on that before you continue there, Kev, it's the same thing. I know Flames home games and Canucks home games. I know Canucks home games because I'm a Canucks fan. I know Flames home games nights because I live in Calgary. Yeah. I don't know what Toronto does off by heart. I don't know what Winnipeg or Edmonton or Ottawa or Montreal or any other of the teams do. I just know those two the best, and I know that the Canucks are quite good at doing that. They can still be better, but specifically out of those two, the Flames definitely need to start finding ways to support that part of the population. We love to celebrate the Cowboy heritage here in Calgary. And I don't think that needs to stop, but I do think we need to find a way to support the changing dynamics and everything of the population of Calgary, and support all the non-white people who want to be Flames fans.
Absolutely. I just, and also, I think the other thing that I really want the NHL to address, and they have not addressed this, and this is, to me, still a stick in my craw with the NHL. They have not. I'm glad that they've brought Akim Aliu on a number of different platforms, but the results of that investigation between Akim Aliu and Bill Peters has not come out yet. And I understand that Bill Peters is dealing with COVID, but that has been good grief. That was November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. That is 10 months of not having an answer to that question. And I think the NHL needs to come out with an answer to that. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen within the next 2 days, but that needs to be an absolute priority for them. And in the off season, as well, I think we need to continue to October, we're going to be talking a lot about transactions and trades and all of that, but we need to make sure that we make space for these conversations to continue. even on podcasts, even on all of this, we need to make sure that these conversations continue. But I guess the follow-up question to that, and we've probably been all over the place, but the last one that I think, maybe the second last one, who knows what will come out of this, but when we come back to Hockey Saturday, what do you want to see, and what do you hope that your attitude's going to be towards what you're seeing from the NHL when we're back to hockey games on Saturday?
Before I get there, there's also one other thing I want to see going forwards is an adoption of what Ron MacLean and Tara Sloan do every Sunday during the season on hometown hockey, and that's acknowledge the indigenous people that their land, the land
acknowledgement, yeah,
the land acknowledgement. I want to see that. I think that would be a fantastic olive branch. It's an extra 3 or 4 words. It shouldn't. If you're bothered by that, then that's a major issue on your part. But it's an olive branch that can help, that shows where what we've done and where we've come and everything, and shows just the land acknowledgement. Anything needs to be part of it going forwards. As for Saturday, I would love to see Vancouver and Vegas specifically. Based off of what I'm hearing today, I'll be disappointed if there's not some sort of kneeling during the anthem for them. I would love to see it all games. I don't expect it. But I want something better in terms of pre-game acknowledgement than what was last night. I don't know what that looks like. I honestly don't know what it looks like. But there needs to be acknowledgement to the fact that they did postpone the games, and they need to talk. Like, maybe it is a 5 to 10 minute video with the Hockey Diversity Alliance talking about the postponing the games and having is so important. Maybe that's what it is, but something along those lines I think is needed.
Yeah, and 2 days is not a lot, but they have the means, they have the people, they have the production, there's things that they can do like that, like the idea of a video, that's a lot of work, but it can be done. I think the NHL should have been thinking about this stuff for a while. But yeah, I agree, like I'd like to see an acknowledgement as to why they didn't play for 2 days, and not just be like, oh hey, like not even like mention that, just a big acknowledgement of why they haven't played and having whatever come out that what they have done in the 2 days, whether it's, I don't know, whether some even like the Sportsnet broadcasters say maybe what they've done in 2 days, what they did one night, well, they didn't have to call a game or be on the panel, or what they did. I know Kelly Hrudey said that was it last night, that said that he'd rather be at home talking about his family. If he comes out, and I'd love to actually hear just a little snippet of maybe something he said that he talked about his family with. Like, just, I'd like to see stuff like that. Because I'm like, even me, I'm like, what can I do in 2 days? Like, we're talking about the NHL and what they can do in these 2 days. Like, what can we do as hockey fans in 2 days? As well. And as we say again and again, there's no right answer. There's no 100% right answer. Everyone's going to feel slightly different, but as long as I think we do something, it's making a difference.
The one other thing I want to point out is I think it's time to have a form of the Rooney Rule in the NHL, and that at least someone, a BIPOC person, needs to be interviewed for every coaching position and scouting position and general manager position in the National Hockey League. It's time for that. It's been long overdue. There's a number of them that I believe would be very strong coaches, and it's time to open up that conversation as well. So I do want to see that. I guess for me, yeah, I want to see something meaningful. I want that, and I want to, yeah, I would just let's start seeing something meaningful. Um, and I think another thing I would like the NHL to see is I would like for them, and I think that this can be done. I would like for them to make a stand that Mike Milbury is not welcome on a National Hockey League broadcast again. I think that is, and I'm sorry to pick on Mike Milbury. No, I'm not. Mike Milbury specifically has said really rotten things, and it's time for the NHL to say no more. It's not welcome.
Mhm.
I don't think that's going to happen these 2 days.
Well, I would like to, hopefully, at least in by the off season.
Yeah.
We won't see him again.
Yep.
Yeah, like we can't expect everything to happen in these 2 days. Like we can't.
Actually, one day.
Yeah, like really, that's really one day if you really think about it. Yeah, so we can't we can talk about all this stuff about the off season and all these other changes that we made, but I think right now there's just certain things that I would like to see happen by Saturday evening.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to speak about, or any questions that we have about this?
I don't think so. But in just some lighter note, what happens first? Hockey comes back, or at the Edmonton Oilers 50-50 gets drawn?
That has been a fascinating.
Yeah. That was the draw from like 3 weeks ago.
August 7th draw.
Good grief. How do you not, it's just, what is it, 6, 7 numbers?
I think it's like 8 or 9 with them, but the whole issue was the website. The website wasn't designed to handle the volume they had. And there was multiple people that ended up buying, like, they tried to buy like $50 worth of tickets and bought $100 worth. So that's what they're going through right now. But yeah, that was just a lighter way to end our serious discussion today.
Fair enough. This is our first YouTube, and again, for those that watch, I don't know if there was any comments because I'm on full screen here, and if I hit any button, it wouldn't be on full screen anymore. So I was trying to just keep it the way it is. But I don't know if we got any YouTube comments or anything like that.
Not this time, but if you're watching this later on, please come. We will be doing more YouTube lives with game recaps once hockey starts up again for the Canucks, as well as we will have other videos as well as clips of everything else that we record. We're a little bit of a newer to this, so bear with us for some of the technical difficulties that we probably will have, like including probably the first 20 maybe 10 minutes of this video. But
we thought we weren't live, and we were.
We're figuring it out, and for those who watch, thank you so much, and we will definitely try and be better allies towards our marginalized friends and citizens.
Yeah, and just kind of along the lines of that too, like if you want to tweet, Instagram, anything with ideas or anything you want us to talk about over the next little while, please do. We're kind of willing to kind of talk about any of this stuff, whether it is the sports, the teams, things like what we discussed tonight. We're glad to do that. You can reach out to our social media accounts, our podcast one, or if you really want to just reach out to any one of us individuals. I think we're all pretty friendly, so you feel free to do that. If you feel more comfortable reaching out to a Canucks fan, you can reach out to a Canucks fan. If you feel more comfortable reaching out to a Flames fan, you can reach out to me. If you want to reach out to Devin if you're a Leafs fan, then sure.
Or you just want dog pics. Gord's an adorable dog. Yeah. Yesterday was International Dog Day, and he didn't share any pics because he was away in Panorama golfing.
Golferson Devin, who, yes, he'll be on later on. We'll be doing we'll have the full crew in this weekend, which includes Noble Nation. And so thank you for everyone for watching this. We really appreciate that. And as Sean said, we're new to the YouTube part of this. We're trying to get some of these technical glitches sent out. We've normally been an audio podcast. We've added video, and we're learning as we go. And again, even with this conversation, if we said something that you felt was off-putting, we are also learning. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse, but we're learning as we go as well. So
it's totally an excuse. It's okay.
What's that?
It's an excuse. Don't say it's not an excuse. It's completely an excuse. We're learning.
You're learning. Yeah.
All the great YouTubers starting, and most of them will tell you that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So how do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter and Instagram.
You can follow me at HideAmazeballs on Twitter. Also, one more kind of shout out, just kind of on the lines of if anyone else is doing the Indigenous Canada course right now through the U of A, I've only done 2 weeks of it. It's fantastic, and I've went through the material that I'm going to be learning about the next, I think, 10 more weeks I have. So if anyone else is doing that, please send me a tweet, because I want to talk about that with more people, and I recommend that everybody do that course. It's fantastic, and it's free, and it's only about I don't know, like I think I lock myself in the room about like an hour and a half a week to work on it, and that's about it.
You can follow Schneidz, SCHNEIDZ, Devin Gordhouse09. He'll have his dog pics up. Tyler is T Noble, TNOBLE. Podcast_hockey. You can follow on Twitter and Instagram. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, as well as iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And of course, you can follow me, KEVOLE. And thanks everyone for watching, and we will talk to you all very soon. Be good to each other.